What's going on, everybody? It is that every other Saturday where I bring in a heavy hitter that understands history and politics. My big homie is going to be joining us in just a second. But for those of you that want to know what we're going to talk about, he always comes with some surprise topics. So we're going to see what he's got. Of course, we've got to talk about the Supreme Court, how they're just setting America back. I mean, literally, they're taking us back to the 1800s on some of their rulings. We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss Mamdani. And my guest is the one who brought him to my attention. And ladies and gentlemen, I've got a new nickname for my guest. That and everything starts in a few seconds. Politics of Being Black with my buddy coming up right now.
I'm up early for the dealers come out. Everybody is outside till the killers come out. You ain't eating, you just act full. I'm impactful. Dozen funerals in a month. I got that pull. I will give it to niggas in all rap forms. Ignatius out right now on all platforms.
So the nickname I've got for my buddy TJ, I am going to call him the man's man. And let me tell you why. MAGA is always talking about the characteristics of what should make a man in the manosphere, okay? One characteristic that TJ has that just suffices every dot, every I, every T in MAGA, the man is a veteran, a military veteran. So that suffices for him. But the most important factor that MAGA doesn't have, this man is secure in self to the point where he doesn't challenge women by making them cater to his ego. This man is so much of a man's man, he owns a cat and is willing to pet his cat on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, my new nickname for my man's man of this channel, Big TJ. What's going on, Mr. Man's Man?
Hey, that's great. I love that, Lamont. That's fantastic. And yeah, although I do have to say, I don't really have much of a choice in the petting the cat thing. The cat more like forces his will upon me. I do. There is one being on this earth that I submit to, and it is that cat. He runs this entire house, and I do love this. I have to say that there are few things that I love more than being a leftist veteran. I love it. I love the fact. I love being a masculine presenting leftist veteran who is successful and secure in himself, because it's great to use against conservatives and MAGA specifically. You can use it as both a sword and a shield. And it's really great. I like to just throw it at them whenever I can, because I know that almost all of them would switch places with me in a second. And the veteran thing is fantastic, because whenever they try to challenge your strength or your masculinity, your courage, it's like, oh, really? I was in the military. Were you there? I don't recall seeing you. Like, what did you do? Like, what have you done with your life? Oh, you're a landscaper, huh? Oh, that's cool. That's like a real sacrifice for the country. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a landscaper, or that being a veteran makes me more of a man, but I know they do think it. So it's pretty great to use. I recommend anyone try it. And you don't need to be a veteran to do it. Like, just being a man and being proud and strong and confident. And if you happen to be successful, weaponize, bully them. It works.
TJ, you didn't have to hit them like that.
Yeah, it's great.
Landscapers, to all my landscapers out there, there's a place for y'all.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that place does not supersede sacrificing his ass, his life, his time for the country. Sorry. If it wasn't for what he did, you wouldn't be able to be a damn landscaper in the first fucking place. I would just keep it 100 with him. But there's a place for you landscapers. We're not saying y'all need to be excluded.
Right, exactly. No. That's not our philosophy, but we know it's there. No. You could, it's
No, go ahead. Hey, look, this show is safe space for you, my brother.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to go venture off. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We love it.
I was just thinking there was a great Dave Chappelle bit he did. I can't remember what the bit was, but he ended it by saying, "Do I come to your job and knock the broom out of your hand?" That's something that I would use. That would be a great thing. Now, once again, nothing wrong with custodial work. It's respectful, It's honorable, and I take as much pride in them as anybody else. But I know they do. It's kind of like how I use homophobia against them. I don't think there's anything wrong with being gay at all. I think it's fantastic. I think it's not just a form of sex, but it's a form of love, and it should be respected as such. But if I can weaponize it to make fun of conservatives, you bet your ass I will. I'll do it every single time. Yeah. So.
We have to, because TJ understands what it means to tell a good story, to try to pierce the veil of delusion that MAGA lives underneath. If you can't tell a compelling story, it becomes hard to get inside that delusional bubble. And the story TJ can pull out, TJ's gun, if we were the Avengers and I'm Tony Stark and I'm about to put on my little suit and I say, TJ, where's your gun? And we're fighting MAGA, all he's got to say is, oh, I'm a vet.
Yep,
And
perfect.
So is my homie that's checking us out today, Gary Green, is a vet. Appreciate you coming through. Tim, what's good? Faith, Family, Fun Rules, what's good? I want you all to please, I finally got my little organization together. You can find everything you need to know about me on beacons.ai/politics of being black. There you can see my IMDb. You can see the show that I do with TJ. You can see the show that I do with Claire. You can follow my Twitter. You can also leave us a voicemail, including you, MAGA, of 30 seconds or whatever you want to vent. And if it's good enough, we will play it on the air. Having said that, TJ, you know what time it is. I've had it. We've had it. That's my homage to the good ladies over at I've Had It podcast. And I've even got some theme music that one of them gave me a little like on. So I'm going to hit the theme music, TJ. Then you go ahead and dive on into whatever it is that you've had it with this week. Floor is yours, TJ. What have you had it with?
Well, wait a minute. We've had it. That's a new one for me. I don't remember this. This must have happened in the last 2 weeks sometime. Is this the replacing the politicking while black?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's two things. It's an SEO thing, number one. And number two, there's people that follow me that follow the I've Had It podcast, and one of them follows me too. And I clearly wanted them to know that I'm biting this from them. So this is also my chance to tell people to go watch their podcast too. Simple as that.
I love it. It fits well, right in place with the theme anyway. But all right, so here's mine. This is one that I'm sure you've heard of. You live in the South, and so I guarantee you've run across this, that there has been this charge, honestly, over the last 100 years to this lost cause narrative with the Confederacy, and not just saying that it's ever since the Daughters of the Confederacy or Daughters of the Confederation, I can't remember what they were called, but they have twisted the narrative into making us think that, oh, these Confederate statues and these Confederate monuments, they don't exist to actually honor the Confederates. They exist so we can see the statues and then learn from history that we shouldn't do what these people did. And I found a video of a guy saying this exact same thing. I don't remember his name, but he was saying that, when someone walks into a building named after Robert E. Lee, what's going to happen is they're going to look up who Robert E. Lee was. They'll find out about the Confederacy, and they'll see, oh, wow, look at all this. They started slavery. What an awful thing. And they would have never done this if we don't name buildings after Robert E. Lee. So in a bit of shameless self-promotion here, I'm going to air a video response I did to this that I wanted you to check out. So you can pull that up whenever you can.
And TJ, again, there is no such thing as selfless promotion when me and you get together. Promote the fuck out of your shit because it's incredible. Yep. It's incredible. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no, this is horrible. I'm sorry.
Somebody walks into a building named after Robert E. Lee, they begin to research who Robert E. Lee is.
This guy makes a great point. It is vitally important we protect Confederate monuments because people will see them, look into history, and find out about all the bad things they did. Now, that argument may sound like an insultingly dishonest casuistry to you, but that's only because you're not being fair. Just think about it. There's a reason that New York City is just teeming with statues of Muhammad Atta and why they've named entire buildings after Osama bin Laden. They obviously did it so kids today or adults 50 years from now will be encouraged to look into history, where they'll find, oh, wow, Osama bin Laden orchestrated the 9/11 attacks that killed thousands of people. How awful. What a terrible person. I'm so glad we named a school after him. Otherwise, I may not have ever known this. This is why we have a statue of John Wilkes Booth outside of Ford's Theater in D.C., or why they have entire public libraries named after Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, Texas. Hell, this is why the current NBA champs or a basketball team named the Oklahoma City Bombers, you know, in case sports fans want to learn about Timothy McVeigh. But what's really funny about them asserting we have some sort of statue-based education program, which is insane, by the way, because like I would never know anything about the French Revolution because I've never actually seen a statue of Robespierre, or ridiculous. But if we roll with this, you guys could be building statues to Nat Turner, or naming bridges, roads, and state holidays after John Brown, you know, people who actually fought against slavery. But no, that's not the case. Instead, you'd rather spend all your time defending these heroic statues built in honor of men whose only significant contribution to history was fighting for a state that wanted to keep Black people specifically enslaved in perpetuity, which is what the Confederacy fought for. It's in the first article of the Confederate Constitution. You guys can read it yourself, assuming that you can, but give it your best shot. See what you can find. All right. So yeah, I'm
sorry, man. Look, now see, I told y'all, when you go to this man's channel, you're gonna be blessed. That's a good one.
You won't regret it. You won't regret it, folks. Yeah.
Look, TJ, of course you know I'm with the sentiment, because they wrongly always try to justify having that bullshit up from the traitors of this nation. That's not the only way they do it, ladies and gentlemen. They also try to pull this. It's not about the statue. It's about the legacy of our family. Okay.
Go ahead.
You mean to tell me you are proud of your family member trying to enslave a group of people and then killing? Okay, let's say you could care less about Black people. That person killed other white Americans. You're happy about that. And then secondly, you want us to know that history, but you don't want that history taught in schools. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Yeah, it's what bothers me is that it's dishonest. That's what bothers me more than anything else, that they will tell you that slavery is bad, what the Confederacy did was bad, but it's important that we honor this legacy. And the question is why? Well, like why? What is so if you actually believe that what the Confederacy was bad, never mind the fact that you love the Confederate flag, you love naming military bases, schools, roads, buildings, statues after Confederate generals, never mind the fact that states' rights was the Confederacy's rallying cry, and it's still conservative rallying cry today. Like that all put aside, what exactly are you proud of here? Because what Lamont said is true. I have no respect at all for, well, these people were my ancestors, therefore I have to honor them. No, you don't. No, you don't. And the example I use is this, that if you look at like ancestry with genealogy and stuff, you can get your DNA checked. Like the average Black person in the United States is 20% white. The average Black person has 20% European DNA. Some have a little bit more, some a little bit less, but that's on average. If you're a Black person listening to this, odds are you are almost a quarter white. I am. I checked my DNA. I'm about 22% white. And so that did not happen because of, you know, recent interracial relationships, right? Like the average Black person does not have a white grandparent. This happened because of the rape of African slaves by white slave owners for centuries. And it passed down through generations, and we are the way we are. Which means, ladies and gentlemen, slave owners are our ancestors too, okay? And you don't see us defending them, right? And so if it's all about defending your family, no, that's not right. That's not true, because I can acknowledge, because of I have a slave owner, at least one slave owning ancestor, that means I have to defend what they did. No, I don't. No, it was still wrong. I can do it. So can you. That's my argument against that.
Well, TJ, the historian, he took it a step further than what I would go. Hell, I got people in my family right now that I don't want to fuck around with and tell them about their fucking history, rat ass bastard.
Right, yeah.
So TJ went further than what I would go with it, but it's the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth. It is. Everybody has someone in their immediate family that does things so heinous and horrible you don't want to be associated with it. But you moms of liberty and folks in that nature keep trying to tell us without telling us you want to be associated with killers, criminals, rapists, traitors to the nation, and you want us to believe somehow or another that heritage is good, but you don't want it taught in schools.
No.
Make sense. And last thing before we go to mine, TJ, Fort Bragg is in North Carolina.
It is. Yep, I was stationed there. I was born there.
Not even. Well, yeah, TJ, no. It was Fort Bragg, named after someone who was a dastardly individual. Then they changed the name to keep up with, we don't want to have our military bases named after these fucktards that fought for the Confederacy. Well, guess what happened, TJ? Trump comes in, changes it back to Fort Bragg, but not the original Fort Bragg, this bum that really didn't do nothing, Fort Bragg, as a way to folks who don't know history to still think it was the same bum as Fort Bragg. I can't make it up.
Yeah, so Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I was born, and I was stationed there before I moved to Indiana years ago. But it was named after General Braxton Bragg, who was a Civil War commander for the Confederacy. Once again, another person whose sole significant contribution to history was fighting for the right to keep Black people enslaved in perpetuity. And for some reason, there is a military base named after this guy. And they went to change. This came along a few years ago where the Department of Defense said, we're going to rename all of these bases. There are a lot of bases named after Confederate generals. Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Lee, Fort Polk. There's several of them. And what they did usually with these bases is they took the name and they changed it to someone else who had also done something for the nation. I can't remember the names of the other ones. Fort Bragg was different, though. Fort Bragg, they changed to Fort Liberty, which I have to say, dog shit name. I hated the name Fort Liberty, North Carolina. It sounded awful. It's like, say what you want about Braxton Bragg, but the name sounds cool. Fort Bragg is a cool sounding name. I got to admit that. But yeah, what Lamont said is correct. They ended up going back in and saying, oh, we're changing it back to Fort Bragg, but it's not named after Braxton Bragg anymore. It's named after some private, I think, who got a Medal of Honor for driving an ambulance during World War I. I can't remember. It was something like that. But someone you've never heard of.
Him. That's him.
Yeah. And they're rolling with that. So they're renaming all the bases, and they're honestly kind of clever in getting around it by naming it someone else who had the name. But yeah, that's the rule. But we all know what it actually is for. It's to appease the racists who just love the names for no. And like you hear Trump talk about this, and he says his defense of why we shouldn't change the name, mind blowing that he gets away with this, because he says, listen, we won a lot of wars out of those military bases. Why would we change the names? It's like, well, the base isn't going anywhere, right? Like that the buildings and the personnel are going to be the same. It doesn't matter if the name changes, but racism means a lot to these folks.
100%. That's their fuel. Racism and hate is their bread and butter. They are willing to eat that up more than they are willing to take care of their own personal needs. It's simple as that. And that's the sad fight we're having to fight, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're dealing with individuals willing to do that. And speaking of that, TJ, we've had it, bruh. I've had it with the Supreme Court. I've had it with this conservative Supreme Court pretending that they're interpreting things down the middle like the Constitution says, when it's fucking Pop-Tarts, bro. It's Pop-Tarts. It bothers me that the same people who will tell you, and I'm gonna save what I want to say about John Roberts later, because John Roberts came out and made a quote. And I'm bothered by the Supreme Court with their fake ass interpretations, because those same people that make these interpretations that govern everybody are some of the same people that'll tell you they love the Lord, they love God, and their interpretation of loving the Lord and loving the God is cheering for the heinous deportation of people illegally, cheering for that shit. Their loving God, loving the Lord is, we don't want abortions, but when the baby get here, we don't want to feed them, we don't want to take care of them. Their interpretation of what God would do, loving God and living a Christ-like life, is we don't want to feed people, even though we keep telling everybody in the world we are the most richest nation in the country. So no, I have no love for this Supreme Court, because their whack-ass interpretations is taking America back. Floor is yours, man.
No, yeah, the Supreme Court is one of the more frustrating parts of the entire American political experiment, because we are taught that we have three co-equal branches of government, the legislative, judicial, and the executive, and that there are checks and balances on them all. One's not more powerful than the other. Not true. The judicial is clearly the most powerful one, like obviously the most powerful one, because it can essentially overturn what the executive and judicial do, and they got to start all over again. Like the executive branch can't say, well, actually, no, we disagree with Supreme Court. We're going to do it. That can't happen, right? That's not how the system works. I mean, that's not supposed to, at least. On occasion, it has. Yeah, on occasion, it has happened. Notably with Andrew Jackson, who just ignored the Supreme Court, but everyone just kind of rolled along with that. But yeah, and then there's this farce that people teach to us in civics class when we're in middle school, that the Supreme Court is a non-political body, that it is a neutral arbiter of the Constitution. No, it is not. And it has never been that way. It is. And on occasion, the Supreme Court will do something that is laudable, like Brown versus Board of Education or something. It's like, okay, the Supreme Court has decided that segregation is illegal. It changed its mind, by the way, because 60 years earlier, they said segregation is perfectly fine, which I think is all you need to know, that the Supreme Court is not some consistent body that is interpreting the Constitution. My favorite is when they say that they're interpreting the Constitution the way the founders wrote it, because no, you're not. Oh, Lord. You know you're not doing that. And my favorite example of this is the Eighth Amendment. In the Eighth Amendment, I believe it's the Eighth Amendment, where it says that the United States government cannot enact any cruel and unusual punishment. But that's subjective. And James Madison wrote that. And I guarantee you, whatever James Madison thought of as cruel and unusual punishment is way more than we would ever even consider, right? Like James Madison would have said it was okay to tar and feather people. We'd say, no, that's cruel and unusual. But James Madison wouldn't have thought that. So of course you're not interpreting it the same way. So yeah, it is unfortunate that if you get a situation like we have now, where you have any type of ideology controlling the court, that's the way the country is going to look for several decades. And Supreme Court justices have lifetime appointments. Lifetime appointments.
Bruh, like when TJ talks about the lifetime appointments, I want you guys to think about how, because of technology and advances in technology, advances in health, how quickly someone who's been in that court 20 years is out of touch with life, because they live in a bubble. First of all, they've got protection. They've got routines that are protected. They've got specialized places that they go. They cannot tell you what it's like to live like an American person, like a regular person. And then on top of that, they'll shield it by they don't watch certain things that the regular person has to watch. They don't have to live the way the American person has to live. And so you do that, and you get somebody who got in the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas in 1992, 93, and he's still there now. We know he's crooked. We know that he's taking money from Harlan Crow. These are facts. These are not things I'm making up. This has been substantiated, but he's not recused himself. There's been no move to take his ass off the court. You're going to get the court bending to the will of whoever's financing their wheels, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to get that shit. And this is what we're getting. The Supreme Court has rolled back rights that have stood previously. As TJ said, abortion rights was settled back in the 70s, and now it's not anymore. Now it's against the law unless you go to certain states. And so I've had it with the Supreme Court. I've had it. Democrats need to figure out a way to get power and do exactly what Trump is doing. The rulings that this Supreme Court just ruled down basically took power away from themselves and gave a little bit more power to fucking Trump, which is unbelievable, which goes to show you that they, to some degree, are a little bit bought. But having said that, TJ, I want to ask the audience to leave me what you think about these I've had it. You can always leave us a voicemail right here, beacons.ia/politics of being black. Subscribe to me, subscribe to TJ. Leave a voicemail if you're feeling nasty like Janet Jackson. And now we'll get into the things me and TJ want to discuss. So TJ, you go first today. What you got on the docket for us today?
I love a good nasty Janet Jackson reference. That's some good song. My first name's not Baby, it's Janet.
It's Janet, baby. Miss Jackson. That's right.
All right. So you mentioned Mamdani earlier. I didn't know that I brought him to your attention. I'm flattered to
Yeah,
hear that. I mean, but
yeah.
to be fair, I'd never heard of this guy until 3 weeks ago. I'd never heard of him.
Oh.
The only time.
So when you told me about him, it's kind of when you first had kind of heard
Basically,
about him.
it's only because a few days earlier I saw that clip of him doing the debate in New York when they were asking all the mayors what their thoughts were on Israel's existence as an ethno state. That was my first time hearing of him. I didn't know he was a socialist. I didn't know anything about his policies. But his answer, for those of you who didn't see it, his answer was, "Listen,
look, because of you, he was going to be one of my subjects. So I'm glad you're taking it.
Perfect.
Not only do I got the clip in which you brought it to my attention, but I've got another clip that really, really ingratiated him to the people of New York and put his ass on the map for a lot of people who are tired with the establishment Democrats. And I don't know if you've seen this one, but I've collaged them together. So let's take a quick look at it. Let's do it. Here we go.
Just say the name right, Mamdani. This is a man who has done nothing.
Former Governor Andrew Cuomo tried to turn the tables on the 33-year-old socialist nipping at his heels.
He has zero accomplishments. I want to be very clear. Now he thinks he's going to be ready to be mayor.
But on the subject of experience, Queens Assembly member Zohran Mamdani flipped the script.
I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you.
I'd like to go to the Caribbean as my first visit.
Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, 2 of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
as a Jewish state?
No,
as a state with equal rights.
Incredible. Incredible seeing it even again. That is wild.
Did you see the way he took down Cuomo? Which was, folks, every single thing he said was true. He made it funny. The little line about the women's private information, that was but this is what Cuomo did. And the Democrats with the money was trying to get behind fucking Cuomo. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Have y'all not learned from what's going on in the country? Floor is yours, TJ.
From that clip, I wrote down 3 things, 3 notes from the clip. The first thing I wrote down was Cuomo mentioning how Mamdani is a young guy, he's 33, and he says that Mamdani doesn't have the experience to do this job. And I got to say, after Donald Trump was elected in 2016, I can't believe anybody talks about experience anymore. Experience has never mattered in politics. It's never mattered. We pretend it does, which is why it's actually kind of frustrating whenever people did this with Hillary Clinton a lot. Or I mean, hell, they do it with a lot of politicians, but they say, this is the most qualified person for the job. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't, okay? It doesn't say, here are the qualifications of being president. Being a 35-year-old U.S.-born citizen, I think you have to be in the country 14 years. That's it. If you got those 3, you are qualified to be president of the United States. Thank you. You know what the qualifications for to be on the Supreme Court, since we just mentioned them? There are none. There are none. If you look at the Zero. You look at the Constitution, you don't need to be a citizen. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be a judge. You don't even need to be an adult. There's not even an age qualification for there. If the president appoints a 9-year-old Romanian girl and they're confirmed by the Supreme Court, they could be, or that's confirmed by the Senate, they could be on the Supreme Court. So yeah, miss me with the whole experience thing. It's never mattered in politics. They joke that elections are popularity contests. Yeah, they are. They are. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's what it is. That's just what we got.
Especially now.
Yeah. And the second thing I wrote down was no fucking shame, man. No shame on Andrew Cuomo. If I were Andrew Cuomo, and all that shit had happened where I had publicly sued for women's gynecological records, where Where I had to resign in disgrace because of my sexual impropriety, or at least the accusations about them. If I were being held responsible for the deaths of hundreds of elderly New Yorkers during COVID because I ineptly handled the nursing home situation, you would never see my face again. You would never see I certainly wouldn't try to get back in politics. And the other one, what you mentioned just then about how people were backing Cuomo, that is wild to me, because I have a clip about some Republicans being afraid of Cuomo, but the Democratic establishment, the governor of New York, the AIPAC people, like all these folks are leveraging so much against Mamdani for Andrew fucking Cuomo. Like, of all people, like the one of the worst people that in the state of New York, and they are banking millions of dollars on this guy because they're so terrified of Mamdani for reasons, right? For reasons, not even good ones. It's kind of wild.
So I've talked about Mamdani at least 3 times with some of the other TikTokers that I'm trying to build the coalition with, and I've always tell TJ thank him for being here, because you was one of the first that said, Lamont, I'm a ride with you. You trying to turn this shit around. I'm a ride with you, and he's been doing that ever since. It was because of him I found out about Mamdani, and I did some digging. There's nothing radical about what he's saying. They keep trying to say he's radical. The man wants a cap on increases in rent. Nothing radical about that, because New York is fucking expensive, ladies and gentlemen. He wants to lobby everybody to get together to raise minimum wage to $30 an hour, not tomorrow, not next year, 2030. 2030. Time to get everybody prepared. He wants public transportation free. He wants early child care free. And what does free mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means socialized. It means that all of our taxpayer dollars, instead of it just being handed over to corporations to be their puppets, that money flows back to the people that actually need it. I always say, when people want to throw that socialism in your face, TJ, you've heard me on this business pony before. Why are you guys trying to make socialism a bad word when you're already fucking doing it to your benefit? You're already handing Amazon millions of dollars to come in your community, then giving them tax breaks to be there. That money could be better served by the people that's been holding up the community. As TJ mentioned when we had this conversation, when somebody goes to the ER that doesn't have health insurance, everybody else is socializing that one of 2 ways. Either it's getting written off by the hospital, or our premiums on insurance go up. We're paying for it. That's socialism, ladies and gentlemen. TJ worked for a socialist company called the military. Y'all love that kind of socialism. But when it comes to socialism that can help the middle class, and Mamdani's talking about it, you got a problem. Last point, TJ, I'll say, and I'll give it back to you. My grandma used to always say, a hit dog or holler. When Mamdani won, Teddy Bad Cruz was running his fucking mouth. Marjorie Trailer Park Trash Green was running her mouth, putting up statues of liberties covered up in burqas. Charlie Cut in the Butt Kurt was running his damn mouth. And Stephen, I'm a racist for sure, Miller was running his damn mouth. And people, when somebody is coming out with that kind of impact, it should tell you something good for the Democrats, because Democratic presidents and office members tend to be younger, tend to have bold ideas, tend to have progressive ideas. Look at Kennedy, John Kennedy, not RFK, and others who have won. Look at Bill Clinton when he first got in office. Look at Barack Obama. We tend to have younger people with progressive ideas that can help everybody. Floor is yours, TJ.
Yeah, this reaction to Mamdani has been pretty incredible. And I'm going to dovetail exactly on what you were mentioning about the Republicans. Now, actually, it's the Republicans and the Democrats, because I have a clip from Fox News. And this is from, I think, Fox and Friends. And on the show, they are talking about Mamdani and they're trashing him. And their guest is Eric Adams. And Eric Eric Adams. Now, Eric Adams last year got in trouble. It was a scandal in which he was using public money to, he was going to Turkey. He was taking bribes from the government of Turkey. That's right, on Turkish Airlines. And so there was this really funny thing when they were looking through the records where he would be flying to like South America, but he would stop in Turkey first because he had to, because he always had to travel on Turkish Airlines since they were bribing him. And the bribe was for something hilarious too. They were constructing a building. Yeah, they wanted they wanted to avoid like a fire code inspection. And so they were bribing him for that. So God knows what else he's been bribed on. Totally corrupt. And then he got Trump to intervene and get the charges dropped. Ever since then, Eric Adams, who is a Democrat, has been kissing up to Trump and Republicans. And can you pull this up, Lamont? Let's see him talking about Mamdani.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Adams is no longer a Democrat at this point. He's an independent. He filed the paperwork to make himself an independent. And TJ, true story. One of my closest friends in social media, sister, worked with Eric Adams and can tell you all the other crooked shit he was doing. If I can twist her arm and she can be safe, one thing that he was doing, he was skimming the money that was going to the public transportation system and had been doing that for years, and then took their retirement and switched it over from 401k to another program that was allowing him to bank money on that shit. That you don't hear about that though. But the mere fact that he went as a Democrat in the beginning to get help from Trump, as a Democrat, that should automatically tell you everything you need to know. Here we go.
All right, here we go. Here's Fox and Friends.
Candidate, Democratic Socialist. He wants to freeze the rent. He wants city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace the police because that's going to help. He wants $60 billion of debt fund for affordable housing. He wants free buses, no cost for childcare, baby baskets for newborn, and a $30 minimum wage. How can someone vote for this?
He's a snake oil salesman. He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New Yorkers' high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that. You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living. And this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards.
Okay, I've got a lot to say here about this clip.
Please.
First, I'm not above going below the belt when it comes to, my political opponents, my enemies of the people, as far as I'm concerned. But Eric Adams, I didn't know that about him skimming off the top, or allegedly skimming off the top, according to one of his staffers and everything. But I'm not surprised, of course, because Eric Adams just seems cartoonishly corrupt, even for any random politician, but he doesn't seem particularly bright either. And this isn't, he doesn't seem particularly smart. What was like a police chief before?
He was a police officer, then a police chief, and anyone who sounds very similar to Mike Tyson, I don't even know how you won office in the first fucking place. But I digress. I'm sorry.
No, I was right about to go there. And this is, I always have to be careful with this because I am fortunate enough to be a decent speaker. So I'm not trying to say that people who aren't particularly good orators are unintelligent. You can be a really bright person and not be good at public speaking. But after a while,
let me help preface it so that people don't think that you're being one-sided. Ladies and gentlemen, basically what he is saying and why we do pick on politicians that make these type of fatal mistakes. We're picking on Eric Adams in particular because of the level of childish transactions he was doing, thinking his ass wouldn't get caught. That's stupid. Like, there's no way around it. There's no way around what he was trying to do with Turkey. Flying there and then going to the Belize and shit, that you're not gonna get caught. That one example of stupidity is something that we can just extrapolate. So when TJ says this about Eric Adams, he's not generalizing everybody who speaks a certain way or who looks a certain way or who went bald before they was 22. He is just specifically talking about the dumb mistakes Eric Adams made. Floor is yours, brother.
Yes, basically, you can be smart and sound dumb. That's totally possible. There's no reason that can't happen. But what you don't want to do is be dumb and sound dumb, which is what Eric Adams is. Like Eric Adams just he hasn't done or said anything to convince me that he's a particularly intelligent human being. And then when he sounds like it as well, it's okay, that confirms all my suspicions. But he did well enough to succeed in becoming into high office in New York. It's kind of crazy to me. But the attacks against Mamdani are specifically what I want to talk about here, because the Fox News host was there reading, says, can you believe this guy? He wants government-run grocery stores, which they've really gotten upset about. Like, they have really been upset about this. And for those of you wondering what we're talking about here, is that there are certain regions in the country that are referred to as food deserts, where there just aren't any grocery stores in the immediate vicinity, and the people, they sustain on fast food or convenience
stores.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not healthy. So Mamdani says, okay, well, in these areas, we should just, put our own government grocery store in there. That way, the people have access to fresh produce and food to sustain themselves. And these grocery stores are government run, so they're not going to be run for profit. So the costs are going to be low enough for them to afford it. People have gotten really mad. They've gotten really upset. They'll say stuff like, well, how can you expect grocery stores that are private to compete with a government grocery store that isn't working for profit? Well, they won't be, because they're not in the area, right? Like, the whole point that they're there in the first place is going to be because the private market isn't taking care of this need. Also, as someone who's in the military, the military bases have government-run grocery stores, right? That's what we like. The commissary is cheaper where we can buy our food at military bases. But there's also surrounding private grocery stores outside the base that don't go bankrupt, right? So it's a weird argument that people just focus on this. Also, he mentioned that he wants to replace police officers with social workers. And what he's talking about is something that I don't know if we've talked about in the show, but I feel like it's something we would have, that police officers are tasked with a tough job. I mean, let's be honest, they are. No one doubts that. But it's made more difficult because we ask cops to do things cops should not be doing. My favorite example of this is noise complaints. If you are having a party at your house and it's too loud, an armed representative of the state could show up at your door, like hand on their weapon saying, how about you turn the music down? Like that's insane. There's no reason a cop with a gun needs to show up for that. And Mamdani had I forget the stats, but like how many thousands of social welfare or mental health calls that the cop you're overburdening the police department. So he says, listen, let's make life easier for cops so they can go after people who are doing real crimes. And whenever there's a problem that requires a social worker, we'll send a social worker. There's no argument against that. This is actually a benefit for the cops and the community. And then the baby basket. I don't even know what a baby basket is, but I've heard them. I have no idea. I don't know what the basket it contains. I don't know how much it costs, but I keep hearing them say he wants to have baby baskets. Like, all right, you're going to have to tell me why this is bad. I don't know. I can think of 100 things the government spends money on that seems less efficient and less useful and less cost effective than whatever a baby basket is. And the $30 minimum wage you said too, hasn't it been funny that when did we first hear about fighting for a $15 minimum wage? I feel like it was 10 years ago. I feel like
it was like 2010. I remember when Seattle was one of the first places that said they was going to increase it beyond $10, and this was 2012. I remember this specifically because me and my wife was in Seattle.
Yeah. So we've been talking about a $15 minimum wage now for going on 15 years. $15 minimum wage is not going to be high enough. It has to go higher, right? Like that, and in New York City, I guarantee $15 minimum wage seems insufficient. So yeah, I don't understand the reflexive response to, and the last one where he says he wants to raise taxes on the top earners in New York City by 1%. I can't believe this. This is monstrous. And they're acting like they're burning down the country by raising taxes like 1%. I couldn't even believe they're flipping out over this. But yeah, and they say that the top wage earners are going to leave. No, they're not. Right? Like whatever they're paying now, in state and local taxes come out, let's say it's 40%, they're not going to evacuate the city of New York for 41%. But that is insane if you think that's going to happen.
No, I mean, man, it's scare tactics. Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and basically demonize Fox News, saying that you've got these old ass millennials that's about to kick the bucket that are watching Fox News. Marjorie Taylor Greene said that. And those people, TJ, are caught in this bubble where they're delusionized, some part because of their fake ass religions that keeps them believing in stories. And then they go to Fox News and then they get more stories. For them, they hear this stuff that you said, and because they don't critically think, because when they hear stuff that comes on the news, they don't look it up, they just take it as gospel. And instead of thinking, okay, what could it really mean? They hear replacing social workers with policemen as we're going to send a social worker to get the guy who robbed a liquor store.
Yeah.
We're going to send a social worker to get the guy that robbed a bank. When what they don't realize is you would make the lives of police officers a lot better, because there are a ton of things you can do with a social worker that you shouldn't do with a police officer. Mental health crisis, domestic disputes that are nonviolent, homeless complaints. How often do you have to see police officers go to the corner street because you've got homeless people standing there on the corner? We need to fix the homeless problem in the first place, but we really shouldn't be doing it with police officers that could be doing something else. Child neglect and abuse situations that are not violent, substance abuse, overdose, and elder care situation. Ladies and gentlemen, these are all situations you do not need an officer to show up, because usually when they show up with a gun, it's going to escalate the situation. Have someone who has more training in those specific areas that doesn't come with a fucking gun if it's a nonviolent situation. And the minimum wage to $30 an hour, that can be escalated over time. And and TJ's heard me say this because I be on my soapbox about this. You can implement something like that. You don't just go across the board and blanket say all of a sudden tomorrow, even mom and pop small business got to pay $30 an hour. You start in a tiered fashion. If your business is bringing in whatever the number is going to be, 10 million, 11 million a year, you start increasing it from there. And as the economy gets rolling, then you slowly roll into where you've got the mom and pops paying that fee. And what he's doing with trying to cap housing is what we should have been doing in the first fucking place. Because I always say this to TJ and everybody that'll listen: inflation always benefits the wealthy twice, and it hurts the middle class and poor twice. Because when the government pumps money into the economy, majority of that money goes to the rich. The first leg that gets pumped out goes to the rich. Then on the back end, that money comes back to the rich, because now they have an excuse to say we have to raise our prices because there's too many dollars in the fucking economy. That does not mean me and TJ and everybody else who's middle class and poor got our hands on any of that fucking money. But you got some in the beginning, and then you get to raise prices on the back end, and all that extra money all these companies do is buy back their stocks, ladies and gentlemen. That's how the wealth gap has gone from 3-4 times that is concentrated with the top 10% to the rest of us. All Mamdani is doing is putting a Band-Aid on that situation so that the middle class and the poor can catch up. What is so hard about that if you're poor and middle class? What do you think? You're going to keep waiting for the rich to come save you? If they ain't done it now, their asses is not coming no time soon. The knight in shining armor is not coming. Why is it so difficult to think that something like that could benefit? And then childcare for everybody. We love to talk about how much we want our children to be smart. We want to be competing with the other nations. Every study I've ever read says that putting your child in early education is going to be one of the best things you can do to have success when they get beyond college. I've owned a daycare. I've worked in the community. I even worked with trying to put in a community grocery store. I've got a lot of experience in all this shit. So these things that can help the community, and my child care center was in a food desert on top of that. Everything TJ hit on. These things are needed. This is a message that progressives are getting behind. And the biggest impediment to getting candidates like this, TJ, it's not the Republicans, it's the Democratic Party. It's the Democratic Party. The governor of New York She didn't come out and say she's not going to endorse him, but she did the political PC thing. I don't know. I got to wait, blah, blah, blah. No. You was just endorsing Cuomo, whose rap sheet is almost like fucking Trump's. We're tired of that. Maybe your corporate bosses aren't tired of that, but the American people are tired of it. You get the last word, TJ.
Yo, I feel like we're gonna bounce on this because there's a lot here. This is with your last point with how Democrats aren't big fans of Mamdani either. Not surprising, but still incredibly upsetting. That what people have to realize that we talk about money in politics and why money in politics is bad. This is exactly why. Because if you're running for office, right, you need money. So the higher the office is, the more money you're going to need. And you look at the odds, the person with the most money usually wins. So you want that money on your side. Now, there's two ways to get this money. The first way is you can get it from your constituents, the people who you will be serving, the people who are going to vote for you. And they are limited with how much money they can donate. First off, your average person and below, maybe even slightly above average and below, is not going to have the extra cash to donate to a politician, right? They need that money to take care of themselves and their family. So already, even with your constituents, you're still skewing toward higher end earners who are going to be donating to you. But it's a more honest way to do it. The second way to do it is to get donations from mega corporations and from, act like the actual 1% and billionaires and companies giving $1 million, because corporations are not limited. Actually, they're not actually limited with it because they can donate to super PACs. They can donate as much money to super PAC as they want. And the super PAC can donate to you, but you know who it comes from. So, if you're smart, you're saying, okay, I'm going to go where the money is because they're going to get me in office. But once you take their money, you have to do what they tell you. Otherwise, they're not going to give you the money later. So so that's what happens, that these politicians, both Republican and Democrat, are wedded to these special interests. Like the actual minority that matters in the United States are the rich. They're the ones who actually control everything. So they don't want someone like Mamdani. They absolutely don't want someone like Mamdani, because with a minimum wage thing, Lamont, you already know what I'm going to say here, that whenever we say that, minimum wage is kind of a problem, or even just standard wage, and they will say, well, listen, you can't raise the minimum wage, because if you do, corporations are just going to raise their prices because they want to keep that profit margin. Okay, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about this profit margin thing, because they could just eat it, right? They could, but they're not going to because they want the money. And they have been screwing people for, honestly, centuries, but decades, at least with our current system. If you look at 1960, the average CEO made 20 times what the average employee made. And you might hear that and say, hey, that's a lot. That sounds fair. Yeah, okay. If you want to say that, it kind of does. Today, the average CEO, 325 times what the average employee makes. They don't need to make that much. They don't.
No.
I'm sorry, they don't, right? So if you implemented systems in which workers had more say or more control of how this money is spent, how it's allocated, they're going to take care of themselves. They'll take care of each other, and we can solve that problem, right? Because we just assume that the natural order, like the correct state of this economy, is that corporations get to keep tons of profit, pay out giant bonuses to the people at the top, buy back their own stock, which shouldn't be legal either. Like, it's just stock manipulation. It's kind of wild that we just accept that. And what's the last thing I wrote down here? I can't read it. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of my problem right there. So yeah, I wish I could read that. I don't even know what that third thing I wrote. It looks like a pay for what we value. That's what I wrote. Because you were talking about your involvement with daycares and grocery stores and everything. And we say that in this capitalistic system that the harder you work, or the more you do for society, or the more important your job is, the more money you get. Not true at all. And it's bullshit. And
man, that shit is not true.
It's yeah. So, and I say now, for both those examples, the hardest working people I've ever known have never been the richest people. And I can just speak for myself. Yeah, speak for myself. As I've gotten older, the more money I make, the easier my job gets. It's never been the opposite, right? It's always been the other way around. And as far as people doing jobs that are important or valuable to society, please tell me what is more valuable to society than taking care of kids, than child rearing, than making sure the next generation is educated, that they're fed, that they're healthy. We don't pay them shit. Well, the government
Nothing.
sure as hell isn't interested in paying them a lot of
Nothing.
money. So if we really believe, if we actually think like we say that taking care of kids is important, why isn't the government funding this? Why are we not making sure that moms, at the fucking least, that moms get a year off of work that we pay for to be there for that kid at its earliest stages? We don't care. We don't actually care about that. What we care about is Goldman Sachs, or we care about CEOs getting as much money as they can so they can pay out politicians to get even better deals in the future. That's what we genuinely care about. So it's really upsetting seeing people turning against Mamdani, who were supposedly on our side, but they're on the side of the donors.
And this is why we've got to vote for as many people similar to Mamdani as we can. We got to keep building coalitions as we can, because this has got to stop. We're going to be stuck in this vicious cycle. And TJ, the vicious cycle is not just Democrats shutting the door, but as Democrats twirl their fingers through their hair and keep giving us, as Homeboy said, snake oil salesmen. I call them used car salesmen. Democrats are going to continue to give us used car salesmen that their money buys, that the American people at large is going to say no to, and then the Republicans are going to keep winning. Democrats are playing the short game. They are playing the short game. If we could sit in a room and place the far left policies with the quote unquote far right policies, the average person would go left every time. They would go left because the average far left person is about taking care of everybody instead of consolidating the money and the power at the very top and then letting those people set the narratives for everything. I mean, they set the narrative for how you vote with their money. They set the narrative on who you vote for with your money. Then they set the narrative on your workplace, on your workspace, on your health care. No. America could have nice things, but we've got to take it. As TJ says on TikTok, power is taken, not given. We've got to take it, and New York has decided that they're going to try to take it. TJ, I didn't bring my cord, so we got enough time for one more thing before my battery kicks the bucket. What you got for me today? We'll do all yours today.
All right. Well, I'll bring up one more thing about Mamdani, and that's them attacking him on the racist front, which we didn't get to. But I'm going to read this real quick. Yeah,
please,
right. Yes.
Please, let me pull it up. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, so this is from Representative Andy Ogles, a Republican in Congress, who says Zohran Little Muhammad Mamdani is an anti-Semitic socialist, communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported, which is why I am calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings. Attaches my letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi. Yeah, so like Mamdani became a U.S. citizen about 10 years ago or something like that. And Republicans are saying, you know what? Since this guy is a socialist, this guy disagrees with our system of economics, this makes him a terrorist. And because he criticizes Israel, he's against national interests, we need to denaturalize him. And I want to point this out to folks that, so what Lamont mentioned is that for the most part, I agree that if you talk to your average person and line up a ton of left-wing policies, a ton of right-wing policies, for the most part, the left-wing policies make more sense. There are a few notable exceptions, one of which is immigration, which is kind of disturbing, like how many Americans are far right on immigration. And this first came to my attention back in October. And in October, I saw the Republican National Convention, and they had a bunch of signs up there. Do you remember it said mass deportation now? Do you remember they were holding those signs at the RNC?
Yeah.
And I saw that and I said, oh man, the American people are going to revolt against this. The American people don't want that. And the next week, I saw a poll, and I saw several others afterward, where it said, do you support mass deportation? 54% of the American population said, yes, I support mass deportation, and it stayed consistent. And then if you look at the polls, it wasn't always like this. That if you go back to 2015, 2014, the support for immigration was high. But over the last decade or so, a lot of Americans are all now, they might say that they're against the way Trump is doing it with, the ICE deportation, stuff like that. But as far as the concept of deporting people from the country, the undesirables, a lot of Americans are on board with it. And to the point that, like, it is wild to think that this isn't some random state representative in Roanoke, or like a Rhode Island or something like that. This is a sitting member of Congress, a Republican, saying, yeah, we need to denaturalize this American citizen and deport him. And it's not even a major news story. It's not. It's not a big deal at all. And so that I think that, those attacks, and especially there was a CNN clip, I wish I'd have brought it up, where she said that, a lot of people are worried that this guy's a Muslim and that he's the mayor of New York. A lot of people have been saying this, and I haven't seen this much Islamophobia since September 12th. Like right around that time, you had a whole lot of it. But it is like what they're saying is Mamdani on the racist part is really disturbing. I don't know if you've seen that too.
Oh, I've seen them all, man. And because this is what works. Do you remember they tried to do this with Barack Obama? Not this harsh, but they basically tried to say the man wasn't even American. They tried to say the dude wasn't. Donald Trump was calling for his birth certificate, ladies and gentlemen.
Real quick, I'm sorry. So, back in those days, Trump cut his teeth in Republican politics with the birther issue, that he was running with this story that he didn't believe Obama was born in the United States. He demanded that he release his birth certificate. And this is when I found out that there are two types of birth certificates, because Obama released his birth certificate in 2007 or 2008. And they said, oh, no, that's not good enough. We want your long form birth certificate, something that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know there was another type, because anywhere you go to get a passport, you go to join the military, anything, your regular sealed birth certificate is fine. You don't need to go to the doctor and find an even longer version of it. But yeah, that's true. It is wild how, and that's what propelled him to the presidency, honestly, is tapping into the racism of the Republican Party. Sorry.
Oh, you good. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, it's a mess. So we've got a bad storm here in North Carolina. And so I was going through this show on reserve power anyway. So we're going to have to cut it a little short this time. But damn, man, this was one of the ones we would have went 2 hours on. But ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to my channel. You can catch all my links right here, beacons.ai/politics of being black. And I hope TJ continues to bring short clips of what he does on his channel, because anytime you need a pick me up, anytime you need that oxygen to get you through a rough day where MAGA has been fucking around, please go check this man out. His link is in the description. TJ, before this battery kick the bucket, tell the people what they can look forward to on your channel in the next couple of days.
Maybe in the next couple of days, but certainly the next week or so, I'm gonna be doing a video on the formation of materials and how everything you see has been forged in a star, and how stars process different elements from iron, all the way to heavy metals like gold, silver, platinum, so on and so forth, through supernovas and mega supernovas and neutron stars. It'll be pretty good, pretty fun stuff.
Well, when you say that, everybody's going to know why I get along with you, because they already know I'm a fucking nerd about that stuff anyway.
It's amazing.
I told somebody, I was like, look, you do know that everything on your body came from the sun, including your body. You do know that, right? You do know you was born out of something that supernova possibly came as a black hole, and everything that you see comes from the sun. No, what are you talking about? Of course, this was someone who was into the Bible and religion and stuff like that. You know how it goes. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in 2 weeks with TJ. I'll be back all week long. You know what I'm doing. Please subscribe to both of our channels. Please go check me out. I've got a newsletter now that I'm giving you guys information each and every week on what's going on, the top stories in politics. Check me out. Until that next Sex is Hell video, we're out.
Later, folks.
Yeah, my bad, man.